Critics have suggested that Western media actually concentrates on India's challenges of poverty without adequately highlighting the country's advancements in technology, space exploration, or economic growth. That is the crux of my point. And then Indian media also showcases American culture itself as gun-ridden and violent. Lauren had shared a ground report of a train burglary incident in Lincoln Heights of Los Angeles. NPR journalist Lauren Freyer went ahead and suggested that the filthy tracks and incidents of train loot were reminiscent of India. How would a reputed journalist from NPR get to the gross generalization? At the same time, we cannot worry about who didn't boast about it in Western media. If you get asked by a non-Indian about moon mission related or anything about India, it is okay to say, I don't know. Let me find out, because answers to India is complicated. We go back thousands of years. See, YouTube needs enough subscribers and engagement to show my video to others. I want this message to go out to all the Western journalists who are covering India and the Asian subcontinent. Can you subscribe so that we can spread this message together? Always put Americans on a special pedestal. In fact, Indians were so crazy about America, we also celebrate Kim Kardashian's birthday. Indians even built a temple for Donald Trump. So we get influenced by America a lot. India landed on the moon. My phone started blowing up with messages from family and friends, colleagues, cousins. Everybody was feeling proud. It felt like one of my family itself has accomplished this. We left India 26 years ago, and even for us, it felt like Diwali yesterday. Initially, it felt good that India landed on moon, but then I realized how big of a deal it actually is. I want to use this moon landing events coverage to talk about how media plays a big part on how we think and react. Stereotypical coverage of poverty and violence news is what bothered me for many years. My biggest pet peeve has been that Western media unfairly undermines Indian accomplishments. And then Indian media also showcases American culture itself as gun-ridden and violent. Instead of cheering with glamorous headline like India did it or India became the first country to land on the moon south pole at a fraction of the cost, instead of saying that, they said India becomes the fourth country ever to land a spacecraft on the moon. I read it as, boo, you are not the first. Calm down, India. It's not a big deal. Their reporting is not wrong. It's a fact that India was the fourth country to go there. So we have to give it that the reporting itself was accurate, but the signal headline has a subtle undertone to it. That's what I wanted to drive here. Let me explain. For those of you who remember or read about the mesmerizing television coverage of the Apollo moon landing 50 years ago,
it's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Oh, that looks beautiful from here, Neil.
it not only left a profound impact on the pop culture and the American psyche, it also brought the entire world together. The media coverage of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin hoisting the US flag on the moon in 1969. I mean, who can forget the words? Extremely dedicated media effort of those days had a lasting influence on public perceptions of the space missions as a whole. That was something very high effort journalism was there in those days. People were celebrating wildly. Coming back to this moon lander, I do not want to say that India alone is great. No, that's not what I'm saying. No one can take the glamour credit away from USA as a first country to have landed on the moon. That's a fact. India, in fact, must have used some of the knowledge from US's moon mission. I do not know for sure how much that mission's information was helpful. Humans build on previously gained knowledge and move forward. That is an acceptable practice of evolution. We are not talking about taking or giving credit to anyone. See, the earliest Indian astronomy dates back to Vedic period where celestial observations were documented. If you look at the Vedanga Jyotisha, it's one of the oldest texts discussing astronomical concepts. So those learnings may not have helped with any of these moon mission landings. The main point is observation on how the media headlines are different for achievements across the world. Even our bitter soulmate Pakistan did a better job. See the Pakistan's Dawn newspaper headline. It was awesome. They were actually praising India. Again, my intent is not to demean the people who were there decades ago exploring the moon. I mean, my friend Ravi, he argued with me yesterday and he said, hey, USA didn't have to make a big deal in news about India going to the moon because they did accomplish it in 1969. It's not a big deal. India is not the first. And he asked me if Indian media celebrated when NASA's Mars rover was there. I agree with him also. Well, I could not find Indian media downplaying on any of America's accomplishments because I know Indians are highly influenced by Americans and we all Indians have Americans as a high regard in general. My point is that we are not taking credit away from the USA. This is not an ego based nationalism but an opportunity to reflect media coverage, consumption, and how, as audience, we need to push back and demand a fair coverage. Yesterday, when India's rover landed in the southern polar region of the moon, it's the same excitement that Indians had. This makes India the first country ever to reach the southern part of lunar surface in one piece at a fraction of the cost. So India's achievement of landing on the moon holds significance for several reasons. Let me tell you why. First, it showcased India's technological capabilities and scientific expertise on a global stage. Next, it demonstrated India's commitment to the space exploration and research. It highlighted the country's advancements in space technology and its potential to contribute further in the space exploration. For many non-resident Indians like me, these missions evoke very powerful sense of nostalgia and connection to our homeland. I see some of my friends even change their Facebook profile picture to Moon and ISRO, which is the Indian version of NASA. India is on the moon. So many people posted on their Facebook wall, right? Witnessing India's achievements in space exploration can trigger these feelings of pride and joy, allowing us to feel part of the larger collective achievement. Accomplishments like these also rekindled a sense of cultural identity and unity among the NRIs, reminding us of the rich heritage we carry with us wherever we are in the world. The success of these missions can serve as a source of inspiration, instilling a renewed faith in India's potential and fostering a sense of hope for its future development and progress. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. That will help bring greater exposure to the message I'm about to convey. We all know that journalism can be a blunt instrument. There is so much competition today. Most media technically is a business. They need to make money and be answerable to the shareholders. And so media coverage can sometimes reflect certain biases. There might be several reasons why Western media might focus on India's poverty more than its accomplishments. One reason could be just sensationalism and stereotypes and preconceived notions associating the country primarily with poverty. And also, the stories about poverty or suffering can totally align with certain news values, wherein conflict, impact of human interest, making them more likely to be covered. So, covering India's accomplishments might require a deeper understanding of the country's context, the history, and culture. For a network like CNN, maybe they are more interested in covering all these calamities and poverty related stories that might be perceived as easier to report without delving into these cultural complexities and the accomplishments. And last but not the least, there is the audience acceptability of the news in the Western world of India's accomplishments. The problem is that Indian poverty is widely accepted in the Western media. Many times, I even get asked by American colleagues about people traveling on elephants in India just because the media is showcasing those rare videos of people on elephants and not the actual ground reality that India is a busting superpower. I do not get mad at these Americans, but I think Indians are to blame because we are unable to pierce the story about how far India has really come. Another aspect to blame is maybe popular movies like Danny Boyle's Slumdog Millionaire that portrays a life of impoverished young man from the slums of Mumbai. I mean, fans love the stereotypical showcase of Indian struggles, and that are common sight even if you go to any poor zip codes of any country, even in the United States, you see such a poverty. It's important to note that all Western media outlets do not share the same perspective. For example, New York Times had a great headline, and there are many reputable resources that provide balanced coverage of India's achievement alongside its challenges. I'll give you a couple more examples to drive my original point. Lauren Freyer is a journalist associated with NPR and has covered various topics related to India. She is very well-respected journalist. I loved some of her coverages. But in 2022, Lauren had shared a ground report of a train burglary incident in Lincoln Heights of Los Angeles. As you might know, California has been witnessing a rise in smash and grab thefts in recent months. So, the cargo theft in freight trains had turned train tracks in LA into garbage dumps. This is caused mainly due to the disposal of all the packaging material and scrap cardboard by the thieves after they loot. I mean, it's a problem, and unfortunately, such crimes could happen anywhere in the world. See what this journalist did. She claimed, at first glance, I thought this was India. The video, shot by photojournalist John Schreiber, showed how looted packages of UPS boxes, Amazon packages, and unused COVID tests were lying around the train tracks. Despite being privy to the facts of the case, malicious intent to portray as a litter filled garbage dump to a global audience? I have a problem with that. This attitude of casting aspirations of India being underbelly, impoverished, untidy, that needs to change. We are not in a position to take it any further. I might get a lot of examples of, hey, this is how India is and this is how bad it is. There is any country in the world that you go to, we can always bring up pictures of filth, dirt, hygiene issues, poverty. The point is, how much are you highlighting? The point is, how much is the general public being unreasonable or unfair about it? Drop in a comment if you have experienced biased media reporting, because I'm not a journalist. I make a living by doing mortgages and I help families with wealth building. So if you can connect me, maybe we can have a conversation on helping you get a mortgage. But that was my plug. But in fact, I'm very passionate about this particular subject. Let me step back, and when you look at the history, subtle unfair reporting has been done for many years in the Western civilization. I just did a quick Google search to figure out if I can bring some cases in point. It is common to see articles about Indian famine, poverty, and hygiene. El Paso Herald in August 1910, they portrayed India in poor light. Another recent example on coverage of farmers' protests. Western media focus more on protesters clashing with the authorities and less on the underlying issue related to the agricultural reforms, potentially painting an incomplete picture of the situation. See, YouTube needs enough subscribers and engagement to show my video to others. I want this message to go out to all the Western journalists who are covering India and the Asian subcontinent. Can you subscribe so that we can spread this message together? The articles that I was just sharing, they're all public. Just Google it. There have been cases where Western media coverage of terrorist incidents or acts of violence in India, they, they were portrayed as if they are perceived as disproportionately highlighting negative aspects while not giving equal attention to the broader context or the positive developments that are underlying the country. So, some critics, misrepresentations, or misunderstandings in media coverage can reinforce the stereotypical understanding of the next generation of American citizens, or it could mischaracterize the Indian culture and society. Indian media is no saint, okay? It does sensationalize any mass shooting that are happening in US, and it does portray America as a country ridden with violence and hate mongers and all that. That is far from the truth of the American society. We know how loving and caring the American citizens are and how they embrace diversity. I have to confess, there was a time I despised the seeming systemic disorders in India. But India humbles you. It has come a long way from a net recipient to a donor of international assistance. I see now that India donates when there is a global calamity. Most recently, India sent humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. Despite the track record of Ukraine voting against India's strategic interests, I know that I'm oversimplifying here to drive my point. It is important to remember that media coverage can be influenced by a range of factors, including editorial decisions, available resources, audience preferences, etc. While there might be cases where coverage is perceived as biased, it's also possible to find examples of fair and balanced reporting on Indian news from various Western media outlets. We need to acknowledge that. Drop in the comments, let me know what you think. I understand that the extent of coverage that any particular event receives in the media can be influenced by various factors. I mean, in case of these India's moon missions, there might be a few reasons for the perceived lack of coverage in Western media. I mean, they have to prioritize the news. There is always a competition for attention and regional focus, limited resources. Plus, there was Republican presidential debate also yesterday, which probably meant that India's moon mission will not get good press coverage. It's important to note that media coverage can vary, and we all have to understand, and they don't necessarily reflect the significance or achievements of India's moon mission. To conclude, I have three calls to action. First, I believe that there should be a public concern that goes along with media coverage. As media consumers, seeking out diverse and well rounded sources of information can provide a more comprehensive understanding of any country's narrative. And in this day and age, you can actually go to India's newspapers and see their media insight. You can go to different countries' media newspapers and check it. In the larger picture, CNN is trivial and insignificant compared to the greater accomplishment this was. But as media consumers, we must keep a close eye on CNN type of media coverage as they fan the stereotypes. Number two, if you are an NRI, if you are a non-resident Indian, then you do your research and give a comprehensive insight and your personal view on any topic. For example, if somebody asks you, "Hey, I heard everybody is getting married with arranged marriages only in India," right? I didn't have an arranged marriage, but I could research, I could give my insight into it, and I can get more concrete research on why arranged marriages have been very successful or not successful, and what's the background behind it, why we go back 7 generations to pick a bride or a groom. So all that you have to just research and showcase so that people from other cultures and other countries exactly know what's the logic behind India. Then the third thing is share this video with other smart people and subscribe to my commentary. All this actually started when I had an Indian client bring sweets to his mortgage appointment to our office, and we started talking about CNN and how it showcased the Indian moon accomplishment in a poorer light. With Satyamev Jayate, take care.